Okay, I see Malte sitting there. Very good. Good evening, everybody. It's been a long day. I'm tired. You want to eat? I know. Okay. So as you see, I'm trying to make this talk halfway entertaining. You know, wake you up a little bit, get you in spirit for dinner. But before I get to the silly part of the talk, which is like the rest of this, I would like to express my deep and serious appreciation of this award. I'm very honored, and I would like to very much credit Julie and Laura, who are sitting up there, and to really initiate the work back then. So, I mean, all my credit goes to those two guys. Okay, so I've been instructed to talk about the impact of landmarks, and as you can judge from the title, I've taken this advice to heart. So, okay. So when you think about the impact of landmarks, of course, there's a few things that come to mind rather quickly. Lama, LM-Cut. But thinking about this, I realized there's actually something that illustrates the impact of landmarks much stronger still than that. And that is people. Where do I need to point? Sylvie, your laptop? Okay. People have written songs about landmarks. Okay. So our first song is this one here. Imagine there's no landmarks. It's easy if you try. I mean, sorry, I'm not John Lennon or whoever sang the song initially. So do you know who wrote that song? Is he still here? Oh, he actually went away. Okay, so Rao, greetings. Oh, you're there. Okay. Very good. So thank you for the song. Okay. So, I mean, so you might now rightfully argue that this is actually a protest song, right? I mean, it's an anti-landmarks song. So let me just say, I mean, this just, emphasizes my point. I mean, protest songs are written only about stuff that really had a huge impact, okay? I mean, if it has no impact, nobody will go protesting in the streets. Good. There's a song number 1, which implies that there's also a song number 2, and I still haven't figured out where to point this. Okay. Good. So now it's getting complicated. We've reached a critical part of this talk. Okay. I'm giving you a choice. Maybe you can already guess what the choice is, so I'm offering you to sing the song on this slide here. Okay. Should I sing it or should I not sing it? Who wants me to sing it? Okay, that's enough. I mean, I would have been happy with 1. I mean, it was really sort of like looking forward to this. Okay, I've been sort of practicing all day in the bathroom. Okay, it's actually become my bathroom song ever since I wrote it, I have to say. So I sing this in the morning. Planning, PDD are scanning, keeping planners planning, ICAPS. Uncertain durations, truth ramifications, wishing FF was by my side. My soft goals they are kissing, my landmarks have gone missing, my stubborn set has turned off the light. Okay, glad you like it. I'm not sure it's worth the Best Song Award. I mean, I didn't have a guitar and so on, but... Okay, to the serious part of the talk. Here's the agenda. Okay, that's the outline of the talk. So we're going to build a rocket and fly to the universe, and everything starts at the Stone Age, okay? I mean, you got to build the stone tools first. So that's where the 3 of us come into the play. So, since I recently had the opportunity to look into the paper again and transform it to AAAI style, it didn't escape my attention that right there on the first slide, on the first page of the paper, I mean, there's like 2 small text paragraphs, and then you're greeted with an illustration of the blocks world in black and white. So, I mean, I'm getting sort of sentimental when I look at stuff like that. I do have sort of more modernized illustrations in the meantime, so here's a simple example problem for landmarks. This robot needs to get the key B and transport it back to cell 1. And there's obviously a locked door in the middle. So as you guys all know what landmarks are, or at least that's what you pretended to when the question was posed a couple of minutes ago, can somebody throw some landmarks at me for this problem, please? Take them and throw them here. That is a plan. I was just asking for a landmark. Huh? Okay, you gotta have key A at some point. Okay, let me speed this up a little since you guys all know it anyway. So a landmark is a fact that is true at some point on every plan. Now in this case here, in any plan, whatever you do, the robot is gonna have to move all across the grid, and because the middle position is closed, you're gonna have to get key A in order to open it, and in order to transport key B, you gotta have it in your hand. So there's simple pre-processes to planning that find this before even starting the planning process. So there are simple algorithms that aren't complete but sound. You can find some of those landmarks. And then we defined all those complex notions of orderings that I'm glossing over here. I mean, basically, all this is saying is that, okay, for some things, you're going to have to do them before other things. So you got to first have the key A and then open the lock. Good. I'm going to gloss, this is all I'm going to say about the actual ECP 2001 paper. The and now question refers to, so we got the landmarks and the orderings, what do we actually want to do with them? Good. So what I proposed back then was to use them for problem decomposition, but I'm not going to talk about this at all. Actually, after sort of being dead for more than a decade, that approach has recently resurfaced in an interesting paper that I recommend to have a look into. But let me get to stage 2. So we are preparing for takeoff, and our pilots for takeoff are going to be these two people here. You probably recognize Sylvia. You probably don't recognize the other gentleman, so he's unfindable on the web. I mean, I did look at the picture of Bernard Nebel's working group, but I didn't know, which guy it was, so good. So all know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about llama, okay? So I propose to use it for problem decomposition. A couple of years later, those guys come along and say, well, let's just use it to generate a review stick, okay? And the simple way to view this is, or the way I like to describe it, is as a to-do list, okay? So before you start solving your problem, you make this list of stuff you want to do. During the search, you just tick off the things you've already done. This will be the landmarks, right? So you tick off what you've already did, and the remaining open part of the to-do list will be your heuristic function. Okay, very simple idea. It's actually not that simple in Llama. They also analyze the orders and do some more intelligent inference. They combine this with many interesting search techniques. And there's actually those two guys who did a very closely related work many years before. It was never properly published. This is a paper from the DC or something in 2003. So I'd just like to credit this once. I don't think those guys are here. Good. You all know the impact of this stage 1 of our little journey with the rocket. Llama's winning all the prizes. Now, as you know, the world depends on the perception of the individual observing it. And from my particular position, actually, what happened was this. Okay. Good. But, everything in life, nothing lasts forever. Okay. We have taken off, we're leaving the atmosphere, and our pilots are going to be those two guys. Now, when I say those two guys, what I mean is Carmel and Eris. I think the monkey didn't have anything to do with it, although I can't guarantee. Maybe you just talk to Eris if you want. Good, so what did those guys do? Well, they found out a way to get admissible landmark heuristics. I'm going to illustrate this with a seriously silly example. So we want to make 2 films. Those films are The Return of the Killer Tomatoes and Zombies from Outer Space. Has anybody seen one of those? Wow. Great. I have a 3rd film later that I'm sure you haven't seen. I'm not sure about the other guys. Okay. Anyway, if we write this up in, our, really sort of dry logical languages, it just looks like that. So you have 2 goals, A and B. You got one action that can do only A, one action that can do only B, and one that can do both together. So the cost of the fancy action that can do both together is 1.5. So that's actually a plan, right? All you need is this fancy red car in the middle. You do both films, costs 1.5. Now, the landmark set here is, as you will trivially verify, is A and B. So those are the 2 facts that are true in any plan. And so Llama will tell you the heuristic value is 2, which is actually not admissible. Okay, so you're overcounting somewhere. And the reason why you're overcounting is, well, you count those 2 separately, although there's a single action achieving both. Okay, they overlap in terms of the achievers. So the first contribution that Carmel and Eris made is, well, to make this explicit. So instead of talking about facts, we're talking about disjunctive action landmarks, which in this case here is just, for every fact that must be true at some point, you just look at all actions achieving that fact. That's a set of actions, one of which must be used by every plan. So once you see that those things might overlap, and then you have an explicit idea of where the problem is, the overcounting problem. And then this elementary landmark heuristic is just sort of a formal construct. We don't actually use this as a heuristic. It's just a way of saying, okay, for any disjunctive action landmark, you have the right to account for the cheapest action because, well, at least that much price you're going to have to pay. Good. So how do we make this admissible? Well, we partition the action costs. Okay. And action cost partitioning, as hopefully most of you are aware, so what you do is you have n heuristic functions, you distribute the cost of each action across those n heuristic functions, and then you sum up so that reduces the heuristic values for each of the heuristics, and then you can admissibly sum this up. Okay. So our admissible heuristic is just, you take the sum of all heuristics, but you have to partition the costs in order to guarantee admissibility. Now, those guys also define a notion of optimality that at first sight might seem rather crazy. So what they say is that, for any of those billion search states you're going to see during the search, what you're going to do is you're going to find a cost partitioning for every one of those states that maximizes the heuristic value. And then we call that partitioning optimal. Now, there's an infinite number of cost partitioning, so it would seem rather hopeless to be even talking about this notion. Turns out it's not hopeless at all. You can actually compute this in polynomial time. So if somebody gives you a set of disjunctive action landmarks in a state, you can run a linear program that will spit out the optimal cost partitioning. And I'm just going to briefly illustrate this here. So we got two landmarks in our case, okay, car A, fancy car B, fancy car. The LP has three variables. So, I can't really, can I point? Oh, well, whatever. So you got a variable HLA, that is the weight that the heuristic will assign to landmark A, and HLB for the weight the heuristic will assign to landmark B. What you're trying to do is maximize their sum, okay? You give the LP the task to maximize their sum. In order to stay admissible, what you need to make sure is that, well, you don't overcount the costs. How do I make that sure? Well, it's very simple. The weight for landmark A cannot be greater than the weight for action A, because action A is in that landmark, so you can't exceed that cost. Okay, it's same for landmark B and action B. Now, the more interesting part is for the fancy car, which takes part in both landmarks. So what you need to say is that, well, you can distribute these costs in any way you like, but their sum had better not be more than the cost of the original action. You solve this LP, you get the perfect heuristic 1.5. Okay. Hello? Okay. Oh, it's happening. Okay. Okay. I should credit here Michael's work, who had, first invented this notion of optimal cost partitionings with Carmel. Good. So the impact of stage 2 was that Bjork won lots of awards. Now, some of you might be scratching their heads and wonder, I didn't actually see that happening. For example, Eris might not remember. That's because it didn't happen. But it really is a very useful heuristic, so it took part in 2 planners that did win prizes at the last competition. Good. We've left the atmosphere. We're sort of heading out of the solar system, and I think that was Mars that just passed. And when I look to the front, to the cabin, I see those 2 guys as the pilots, okay, Malta and Carmel. Now, those of you who are a little bit familiar with this will already know which paper I'm talking about. Wonderful paper, ICAPS 2009. And one of the major contributions here is that a method to find way more landmarks than we could find before. Okay. So this is a very simple example to illustrate this. In this example, you're just moving on a map from A to E. There's 2 alternative paths. Now, with the methods we had before, all we could identify is heuristic value 2, because the only things that are true on all paths are B and E. Okay, so you have no ability to account for alternative paths in your problem, which obviously is something you want to account for to get a accurate estimate. So how do we deal with this? Well, here's the infamous LM-cut algorithm, and in this very simplified example, it's very simple to illustrate, and it actually glosses over some of the more interesting details of the algorithm, but for the point of illustration, here's what it does. Okay, you take that map, we see the heuristic value at the bottom. Okay, I've made it big to draw your attention to it. This is the initial heuristic value. We're going to increase it. What we do is, at any point in time, we make a cut between the part of the graph that contains the goal and the part of the graph that doesn't. Okay, so I make this cut. I've added 1 to my heuristic because one of those 2 actions will have to be used. I remove the cost of those actions. I put them in blue now, and what you see now is that C4 and D4 have become part of the goal region. So from C4 and D4, I can reach the goal at 0 cost. So I've extended my goal region. I'm going to do the next cut between those 2 parts of the graph. I increase my heuristic value. Just keep going like this. Okay. dip, 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 and I'm done, and you see I've cut away the whole graph, and I returned the actual cost of solving this planning task. Okay, so I mean, essentially this is a much, much stronger method for finding truly disjunctive landmarks, rather than just, landmarks that depend on a single fact that is true everywhere. Good, the impact of stage 3 was shown, for example, by Malte in his HKI award talk 2 years ago. I mean, the green line here is IPC 2008 Best Planner. The red line is just a star using LMCut, and if you know a little bit about optimization, I mean, this gap is just amazing. Okay. Good. So what is left to do? Well, we got to reach the Milky Way. Okay, who's going to be our pilots? Well, one of the pilots we've already seen. The other one is Bly. Okay, I'll try to get there, yes. And one thing I'm especially proud of, I've seen it, Dana. One thing I'm especially proud of is that I found a photo of Patrick Haslum in the web. Woo! It's not that difficult, really. You just type Patrick Haslum in Google Images, and there he is. I mean, I don't know what went wrong. I mean, Patrick, maybe you can explain later on. But in any case, so Matthias Westphal has done a better job of remaining secret. Good. So here's my extended silly example. I'm going to have to cut it very short. So in this example here, we're making 3 movies. Okay, so the 2 ones we made before, and another one called Hohe Tannen. Has anybody seen Hohe Tannen? Okay, I kind of expected that. So the literal translation is big fir trees, and it's basically sort of, guys singing in the Black Forest. If you allow me the time, I would like to say what I would really like to see is a combination of those 3 movies, like, tomatoes fighting alien zombies against a beautiful Black Forest backdrop, singing some songs. Okay, in any case, so what we're going to do is we're going to find some disjunctive action landmarks. And here LMCut gets a little more complicated. It will cut each of those separately. Let me gloss over the explanation. And here the actions all have the same cost. Now what is the problem? If you do an optimal cost partitioning, you actually fall short of the real cost of the plan. I mean, what you really have to pay is 2 units, right? You have to use 2 cars, like car AB and car AC. You've done all movies, you're good. But the real cost is 2. And here's how we get to that real cost. Another choice, I can either just stop here and you all go to dinner, or you give me 3 more minutes to finish the talk. Okay, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. There's no more jokes, though. Well, okay. I mean, maybe Aris can come up and tell us one when I'm done. Okay, so how do we deal with this? Well, it turns out instead of using optimal cost partitionings, you can do something that's strictly better, and that's the hitting set. So if you think about it, those landmarks, what they're saying is, okay, every plan is going to have to use one of those actions. But that's just saying that the plan is going to have to hit all those action sets. So any plan is going to be a hitting set. And then the cost of a minimum cost hitting set, of course, is the lower bound. Okay. And in our case here, that's an exact heuristic. Now, here I got this theorem, which I really think is very beautiful. Okay. So what it's saying is that if you generate enough landmarks, then the cost of a minimum cost hitting set will be equal to H+, which is a heuristic that was derived in a completely different manner. At first sight, it seems completely unrelated, but actually it's not. There's a very deep connection between those 2. Now, I do also have the proof of that theorem on this slide, and it's really not that difficult, but I think, in the interest of your sanity, I'm going to skip it. Read Malte and Bly's paper if you're interested. It's really a very simple, beautiful argument, and with that, I'm going to... Oh, no, not yet. I have to tell you what the impact was. Now, I don't have any IPC awards to show here, but, the result really is just very beautiful. Now, if you press me for more practical statements, so what you can do based on this, you can actually improve on LMCut by using hitting sets. Another thing you can use it for is compute H+, and in the meantime, this kind of, keep generating landmarks and computing minimum cost hitting sets over them and then generate new landmarks is the state-of-the-art, or one state-of-the-art tool for computing H+. Now you might say, I don't care about H+, I want a plan, right? Now then I can send Patrick into the bargain once again, and what he's going to tell you is, well, I take the original problem, throw some mutex constraints into it, and then I compute H+, and if I throw enough constraints there, it'll actually turn into H*, which is the length of an actual plan. So, by adding this machinery up one by one, we actually get very far indeed. And well, considering how it all started off more than a decade ago, I mean, with those landmarks and the simple decomposition algorithm, I must state that this is really progress in a very significant way. And with that, I'm going to let you off to dinner, and I already foresaw that we're not going to want to actually have any questions here. Thank you very much.